Good morning. Welcome. It's another edition of NECA Voice of Business, reaching you live on Radio 103.5 FM. It's good to be here with you again. My name is Allow Me Ako. I'm your host as usual. And don't forget, we always love to have this conversation with you. In Nigeria, we have a thriving business community, and we are discussing ways on how to make this community better, what to do to ensure that businesses in Nigeria thrive. And if you're a business owner, or if you want to own a business, this is a place for you to be. Now, as usual, we'll be talking different issues when it comes to businesses, owning businesses, what is affecting businesses in Nigeria. Today, we're still going to talk on tax relief, but we're looking at it from another angle. Considering the fuel subsidy removal issue, we're looking at fuel subsidy removal and options for tax relief. In the studio with me this morning, I have Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. He's a fiscal policy partner and an Africa tax leader. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, remember, as I said earlier on, it's a conversation, so please do call in and share your thoughts with us on 0813-331-3172. That's 0813-331-3172. All right, let's start this way. With the President's inaugural speech, and if you want to consider the business environment, what do you think, how do you think his speech, when it comes to what he plans for businesses in Nigeria, how do you think his focus is going to look like for businesses? Do you like what you heard?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think in terms of the inaugural speech, I think the President addressed some of the most important issues, especially for the business sector. Issues to do with multiple taxation, how do you unify the exchange rate, which everybody agrees. In fact, when I speak to business leaders, many of them say that's actually their number one problem, more than anything else, because it goes into the heart of, can you continue in business if you can't source your raw materials? Or you can source it at black market rate, but someone is connected in your sector and they're getting an official rate, and you can't compete. And then the president also addressed issues of interest rate, to say the interest rate we have is just too high for you to do any meaningful business. How do we bring that down? And then he said, all policies that are not business friendly to be addressed. I think that was very good. Also showing that even before he was funding, he was listening to investors, and he said your complaints will be addressed. I think that was very good. Of course, a big one was the first subsidy. That didn't go well with many people. There was a lot of reactions. I think there was panic buying immediately, and then there was hoarding. Yeah, there was hoarding, and that created a lot of panic and chaos. I think the president made the right call to just remove it. I didn't think that his intention was to remove it immediately. But as soon as people reacted like that, because if you kept it, that's traffic, hoarding, you'll be paying the high price, and government will still be subsidizing it. So what's the point? Just remove it and let's move on. I do think that we're making progress now. I have to say, though, that I think that there's, both an overreaction and also exploitation in the way...
Overreaction on whose part?
On the part of the people.
Okay.
And also exploitation by some Nigerians. And I'll tell you, why I say that. The ride-hailing apps were being accused of not increasing the fare significantly. So they've done about 15 to 20%. You know what happened is because those guys use data for making their decisions. Whereas the yellow cab person just said, well, if my fuel price has gone up by 200%, let me just increase the fare by 200%. And that's the far logic. So some of the data that the ride-sharing app uses is that you use 1 liter to travel 7 kilometers, right? So if you take from the airport to Ikoyi, it's 28 kilometers. So you use 4 liters. Now, if you were charging 4,000 naira for that before, and you're using 4 liters, from about 200 naira before, a liter is now about 500. So you're paying extra 300 per liter. 4 liters is 1,200. What you should do is add 1,200 to the 4,000 you were collecting before. Don't insist that you must collect 4,000 in 3 places, right? The same thing with buses from Ikeja to Obalende. They use between 4 to 5 liters. You carry up to 14 passengers. So all that you need to recover from those 14 passengers is the extra 1,200, which is like 100 naira on top of what they're paying before. From 500 naira, it should become like 600. But what we have seen is people are doubling their prices. And that's not justified under any circumstance. So I do think that overreaction and exploitation will be corrected over time by the market. And that's what I'm hoping. But overall, I think the president has said the right things. We now need to see concrete actions on the ground, particularly as it affects the business sector, to start addressing these issues sooner rather than later.
Okay, that's my next question to you, the fuel subsidy removal. Now, we've talked about, you mentioned how it affects basically usually the common man. Can you talk about how it's affecting, if it's affecting at all, the businesses in Nigeria?
Yes, indeed. You know, at the end of the day, businesses operate within an economic system. So they're part of us, we're part of them. They don't live in a different world. So the biggest impact on people will be transportation, which I expect will be around 15 to 20%. The second biggest impact will be around food, the price of food, because we transport food from, farm to the market. Now, the business community rely on the purchasing power of the people to sell their goods and services. So if those people are struggling to be able to meet the cost of food and the cost of transportation, they do not have extra money to spend on buying so many other things that the business sector produce. And if you can't get the patronage from customers, then what's going to happen is you're going to scale down on your capacity, and when you scale down, you're going to create unemployment, and then more people will get into poverty. Government will collect less taxes. You'll not be able to invest to expand. So really, these issues affect business. But I do think that by dealing with this first subsidy, I'm hoping that what will happen is that the consumption or the alleged consumption by Nigerians will go down. So we had different numbers, around 66 million to 98 million liters per day, which we know is not true. What happened about 12, 13 years ago when we removed the subsidy on diesel? Consumption went down by 50%. So consumption of petrol, I expect, will go down by about 50% as well. What that would do is to save us about $8 billion in foreign exchange. I expect government should then channel that savings in FX to the productive sector. So let manufacturers be able to get FX to import their inputs. Even if possible, allow the people importing diesel to get FX easily from the official market. What that would do is that it will bring down the cost of inputs, including the cost of diesel. Now, diesel actually has, and even the petrol will go up because they removed the subsidy, and that will have a bit of inflationary impact. But what I'm saying is that there will be a compensating downward pressure on inflation if you then make FX available for input that we're importing for manufacturing, and also for diesel, because diesel they are buying mostly at the black market rate. That's why the rate is very high. So imagine if the price of diesel comes down to around 500, right? Because globally, the per liter price of petrol and diesel, in fact, diesel is slightly cheaper globally than petrol. They remove subsidy, petrol is around 490, 500. Why is diesel 700, 800? Exactly. If you bring diesel down to around 500, in fact, the overall impact on the business community will be positive, despite the removal of subsidy on petrol.
Okay, so let's now talk about one of the things that you talked about, my help businesses. What do you, let me ask you to give us like a rundown of what you think government can do. Government talking about subsidy, palliatives for people. What form of palliatives do you think government can give businesses to help them out?
Yes, palliative is such a buzzword in
It is.
Nigeria.
It is.
So we want palliative for everything. And I do agree. If government is going to save between 4 trillion to 6 trillion, depending on who you ask, then and people are making these sacrifices for government to save this amount, then I think it's just fair for government to look at the most vulnerable people and the most vulnerable businesses that they need to support. But I think in trying to do that, everything has to be driven by data and evidence. So sometimes what happens in Nigeria is you just want to do something, so if they ask you, there's something you can say. I believe personally that the most impacted vulnerable people in Nigeria are not in the rural areas, because I grew up myself in the village. And I can tell you, our touch point with petrol was near zero. So you trek from home to the farm, from the farm you trek to the market, you trek to school, anywhere we're going, we're trekking. The people who were less poor had bicycles, the slightly rich one had motorbike, right? You see vehicles once in a while go to the farm to pick produce. So at the end of the day, the impact on them will be very minimal. So I think the most impacted poor people will be the low-income earners in cities and towns who have to commute daily to work despite earning so low. The same thing for small businesses. The small businesses that have been impacted the most are the ones who rely on a better pass my neighbor to generate electricity to do their work, the barber, the hairdressers. I think those are the people that government needs to prioritize in terms of the palliative. We heard Labour asking for about 200,000 naira minimum wage, and I said, well, if you give Labour 200,000 naira minimum wage, you actually end up spending more than the amount you're saving in subsidy. So it has to be that if it makes sense overall, what I think government needs to do is increase minimum wage. My view is that it should be a lot less than 200,000, and also provide some tax break for people who earn low wage, like maybe up to 150,000 naira per month. Give them a break so that the PAYE they are paying monthly, is less. Let's say it's less by like 5,000. So what you've done literally is give them 5,000 naira to spend extra on transportation. And what I like about this idea is that you can't do fraud with it, because if you are not within the tax system and working, then you won't get it. But if you carry cash and you say $800 million from the World Bank and you start sharing it, we will know who you have shared it to, and they may even be the wrong people. And then for people who own small businesses, encourage them to register with the tax authority, and they can also get their own credit through that process, which is not vulnerable and exposed to corruption. And like I said, for large businesses and the rest of us, if we manage that process well and we have more foreign exchange available within the system, what it will do is to bring down the price of input generally. And that will help not only businesses, but also the public at large, because then we have, there's always the cascading effects, because we are largely import dependent.
Let me pause here, Mr. Peter, and take this one. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. What? I'm fine, thank you. What's your name, please?
My name is Binola Ujiru. I'm calling you from Lagos.
Okay, go ahead, please.
You see, this World Subsidy mover, it's affecting everybody. It's not only the rich, only the poor. People are crazy. And what they expected the president to say is that I have removed the threat of it. But he didn't say, when somebody treats you and tell him sorry, the sorry cannot cure the wound. You understand? So he don't tell us sorry on top of the wound, and we are suffering the pain. So that wasn't the solution. And I don't think it's going to be a solution. We need solution. We don't want our children to be going to school every time. Everything that we create, even money that we create. Because you cannot transport yourself in such that you what you are transporting. And you expect me to, and somebody will expect you to sell the same price of items. The items you are can tell you, with bring the transport here. Everything has gone up. We are not happy. Just 1 week in the country, everybody's crying. When it gets this one, everybody, maybe many people are not aware Nigeria will be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, do you agree with this school of thought that the caller just said?
Yeah, I think it's valid, and I can feel the pain. It's a difficult time for everyone, but we also have to think about if we don't remove the subsidy, what will happen to Nigeria? And I worry that if we leave the subsidy, we may end up like Sri Lanka or some countries where they've gone up in crisis, because this is not, we buy these with dollars, right? And we don't print dollars. So if you run out of dollars, what will happen is we can't import the quantity that we need anymore. Then they start rationing it. So you actually have the money to buy the petrol, you can't find it. You don't want to get to that point. So I do think that it's okay to remove it. We now need to try and deal with the consequences by making sure that the impact on the most vulnerable people is reduced. And government has to also lead by example. Don't ask us to make sacrifices when you are not making sufficient sacrifices, because it's leadership. And that has to cut across from the presidency to governors to lawmakers and so on and so forth.
Okay, let's talk about how this FedEx and businesses. You talked about one of the issues that businesses have is running and getting FedEx to run their businesses. What do you think? How do you think this can be managed to ensure that businesses in Nigeria grow?
Yeah, Forex. Yeah. So the thing about Forex is because unless you're America, you can print dollars. Otherwise, every other country has to manage, how much dollars you have versus how much dollars you need. And that's, the liquidity question. If that amount of dollars you have is not enough to meet your demand, then you have to allocate it in the most productive manner. What has been missing is that government has not been using that logic in allocating it. It was mostly if you are connected, you get it. People who need it most may not get it. And that created a market imbalance or imperfection or distortion such that, if you were very connected and you got $1 million, you didn't even need to pay. Somebody transfers to your account, you send it at 750. Overnight, you can be 300 million richer than previously for doing nothing productive to the society. What we can now do to make Forex available is first, government should not ban anything that is not illegal from accessing Forex. You say these items, even though it's not illegal, but you can't come to us to buy Forex. You're pushing them to the parallel market. So the more you push demand to the parallel market without sufficient liquidity, the more the gap between parallel markets and the official rate. The more people will do arbitrage, round tripping to make money for themselves. So government needs to bring all legitimate demand to the official markets and then let the parallel market become black market for illegality, and we can all ignore it. Then we have some provisions in our laws that are complicating our issues, like we are dollarizing Nigeria. There are all manners of taxes in the law that the law says you must pay in foreign currency.
In Nigeria?
In Nigeria.
Wow.
So if it says if you have to incur anything in foreign currency, like if you pay for an app to do this program, you pay in dollars because the app supplier is abroad. Government say you must pay the tax, withholding tax and VAT to them also in dollars. We even have government agencies collecting dollars for their levies, right? I think this is self-inflicted pain. It's unnecessary. You should create demand for your own currency, not against it. When Russia had to deal with sanctions from all over the world, they said, buy our crude in local currency, pay taxes in local currency. Their currency actually even appreciated more than before the sanctions. So this is a very big lesson that we can easily take home and do something about. And once you start unifying the rates, what will happen is you have inflows of foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment. Nigerian companies that export will bring back their proceeds. Because now it's not making sense to bring down your proceeds, because you buy the inputs, the FX at 750. When you sell, government says, give me the FX at 460. Nobody is going to do that. So once you address those issues, I do believe that forex liquidity will start coming back and businesses will have some breathing space to do their business.
All right, we still have a few minutes, so if you want to make a call, it's 0813 331 3172. 0813 331 3172. Now, when we started, you talked about tax relief. Can you talk about how tax relief can help businesses grow in Nigeria, considering the subsidy?
Yeah, good question. So I even think that, whenever this question about tax relief and incentives come up, and I'll say, with the much I know about the Nigerian tax system, I actually think that the priority is for government to remove tax disincentives. So we're not even asking them for any favor. We're just saying the pain that you're causing us, can you take it off so we can breathe? And I'll give you some of those examples. So in April, very close to the end of the last administration, they issued a fiscal policy measure 2023 circular. And that circular was increasing the excise duties on manufacturers, non-alcoholic beverage manufacturers, alcoholic beverage manufacturers, tobacco manufacturers. They introduced what they call single-use plastic tax. If you go and buy anything and they give you plastic bag, you have to now pay tax on it. All of this last minute. And I said, why do you have to do that for a sector that, because of the Naira redesign scarcity, many of them had decline in their sales that was double digit. And they were just struggling, many of them planning to close down some plants. And then you now increase the taxes on them. So that, for me, wasn't making a lot of sense. And then, 28th of May, just the day before the last day in office, President Buhari signed the Finance Act 2023 into law, again imposing more taxes, more education tax on businesses, and they withdrew the investment allowance that people get for buying plants and machinery to do their business. I think all of these are coming at the wrong time. So if you cannot give us relief and incentive, don't increase the burden on us. The place where government can make tax revenue from, in my view, it's pretty easy. First, get government MDAs to even just comply. And then ensure that the existing rates we have get everybody to pay the right amount of the taxes that is currently due. Don't keep going to the same people who are trying to pay their taxes and do the right thing to be asking them to give you more and more every time. If a patient is in intensive care, it doesn't make sense to ask them to give you a little bit more blood, right? They're not in a position to help you, in that stage.
So, talking about taxes, increasing taxes, we know government is trying to make more money, and maybe one of the ways they can do so is taxes. But how do you suggest government goes about this? Is it increasing the tax bills of people that are already diligently paying, or widening their tax nets? How do you advise government to widen their tax nets basis instead of, as you said, burdening those who are already struggling?
Yes. So I think government should, first start by harmonizing the revenue collection agencies. There are just too many of them. In the 2023 budget, there were 63 MDAs that were given revenue targets, all of them chasing the same businesses, individuals, and taxpayers. If you harmonize that, what you do is you block the leakages. And then what will happen is, the amount that Nigerians are paying in taxes now that is not getting to government begins to get to government. The second one is to reduce the number of taxes. I don't think we should have more than a single-digit number of taxes across Nigeria. And then government has to use data and technology to track what people are doing. So we call it tax intelligence. So, someone has a plot of land, they have building where they're collecting rent, they also work as an executive, they travel abroad, they register vehicles. All these economic activities, right, are controlled by governments. Your bank accounts, you get NIN. So that data is what government needs to connect together to know who is doing what, such that at the end of the day, you can tell that somebody is in the tax net, but they're there with just one finger because they're paying 10,000 naira when they should be paying 10 million naira. And government should then collect the right amount of tax. So expanding the tax net is important. Ensuring that people pay the right amount of tax by using technology and tax intelligence, including exchange of information locally and internationally, will help government to raise more revenue than keep going back to the same set of taxpayers to say, can you give us a little bit more? Especially when sometimes they're not even convinced that the little you have paid is being utilized, to provide taxpayer benefits.
All right, and so I think we take just one more call, 0813-331-3172, 0813-331-3172. I got this message. Thank God President Tinubu's modular power generation law will reduce climate change risk, electricity bills, industries, homes, markets. As individuals can now power their buildings via their dam, turbine, toilet, refuse waste, and also sell to others, to earn their income. This is from Ayo Papa. I think he's talking about the palliatives to help. What government is doing to help. Do you think some companies in Nigeria have that ability to generate their own power? Maybe it will help reduce the expenses, or do you think they will even be taxed on that? Also?
Yeah, I don't think it's ideal to expect companies to start generating their own power. So Dangote refinery have to build a whole power plant, So which is why sometimes when you even accuse companies like Dangote refinery of being in the free zone, you say, but this guy is even doing what government should be doing, right? With taxpayers' money. So I think the good thing about it is that investors can come in and generate power based on agreement with states or with even communities. But I don't think that individual companies will start generating power. It will distract from their focus of their primary activity. But I do think that signing that into law, it's progress. If Lagos State can generate power and provide 24/7 power, especially to the industrial areas, why not? I think that is now going to be possible because investors will start with the most viable, cities and states, and I expect that Lagos will be number one on that list. Just imagine if we can provide constant power supply in Lagos, we can provide in the state because we have a lot of manufacturing there. All the key centers where we have manufacturing. Imagine you can provide 24/7 power supply. That will have significant impact on cost of production in a positive way.
Okay. Let's see if we can just take this last call. Hello? Good morning.
I'm enjoying the program, and my name is Gideon. The issue of tax on infrastructure provided by investors, I think we are supposed to have a sort of tax allowance of that. This is different from capital tax and so. So I don't know if our guests now give us some information on this. For instance, having generators because they don't have enough power, and people having their own power. But there are a lot of manufacturers that own their own power supply.
All right. Thank you so much. I think you have to be extremely grateful.
Yeah,
run out of time.
Okay. So what he's trying to say is that if you bought an equipment, let's say plant or generator, before you get the full deduction of the cost over a period of time. In addition to that, you get what we call investment allowance, which is like 3% of the cost, and you get it back from government. That has now been taken away. We understand that government can't afford all the incentives in this world. While we may understand withdrawing some of those waivers, government should not keep imposing additional taxes.
All right, thank you so much. We have to go. Thank you, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you
for having us. NECA Voice of Business will be back same time next week. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Alawumi Akol. We'll now move over to Network Studios for the Network News.
I need to know the students playing well in performance of a promise made during its campaign. Spokesman for the federal government, Mr. Dele Alake, set up votes following the presidential outings in Abuja, adding that the funds will be domiciled in the Federal Ministry of Education to be accessed by indigenous students of tertiary institutions only.
Government at all levels have been urged to collaborate with stakeholders in the health sector within communities to improve healthcare delivery system in the country. A former acting governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Mrs. Sarah Aladini Okoro, while speaking at the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between members of the Ofa Metropolitan Plan and the Clinical Laboratory Center in Ofaluku government area of Kwara State. According to Mrs. Sarah Aladini, government cannot show the healthcare service delivery alone. She explained that stakeholders and communities could be involved in healthcare service delivery.